So guys, a brief rundown into the way my mind works in regards to this CF Teens program we're trying to put together here at the gym. So it is about 2 in the morning. I figured instead of seeing my ugly face, I could show you how my brain works on a flow chart. So in order to think about program design and think about what we should be doing for CF Teens, first I like to ask, what movements are we going to be doing? And then the answer to that for me was CrossFit. After that, I kind of want to ask myself a question: what is CrossFit? And what is CrossFit to a teenager? Well, CrossFit to a teenager is just about the same in my mind as it is for an adult, where we are incorporating weightlifting, gymnastics, and metabolic conditioning. Now, the only thing different about training an adult and a teen is we're going to be actually probably trying to focus a little more on the nervous system for a teen, as well, as we want them to start developing that fairly early. An adult, we may be a little behind if they're starting at 26, but we can really get a jump on them at, we'll say 6 to 14, right? And even higher. So if you take a look, the way I've broken this down is we know that CF is weightlifting, gymnastics, and metabolic conditioning. So what I've done here is create this sample example of weightlifting, gymnastics, and metabolic conditioning movements, and wrote them out in sequence of what I think weightlifting is involved, or what weightlifting movements are involved with CrossFit itself. Then a list of what gymnastics movements might be involved, and a list of metabolic conditioning movements that might be involved. Now, this can obviously be an endless list and a specified list based on what you're trying to get done, but I kind of want to show you how my mind starts to work. Now that we know we have weightlifting movements, gymnastic movements, and metabolic conditioning movements, well, what we want to do is take a look at, we talked about the nervous system. There are a couple different ideas I want to work for the nervous system. Foot-eye coordination, I called it. That's more of a joke, to be honest with you. Anything soccer, hacky sack, ladder, agility drills, boxing footwork drills, Muay Thai footwork drills, dot drills, hand-foot. That's any kind of sport like rugby, kickball, football, etc. And then hand-eye would be anything playing catch, boxing on a heavy bag, hitting the handball off the wall, or playing what they call wall ball. Agility ladders, maybe even on the hand. Any kind of reactive catching. So somebody having you turn around and throwing something or catching something that's already in midair, or catching something that's bouncing off a wall while your back is turned. The number chart gain, that would be just kind of checking your hand-eye coordination with speed. So I have the nervous system, and then over here I have the fascial system, or what I would call muscle power for the fascial system, and brain power for the nervous system. Anywho, so what I like to do for the teens is possibly break us down into what we call anatomy trains or fascial trains, which is a book and a phrase I believe coined by Thomas Myers, who owns a book or has written a book called Anatomy Trains. So we have, these are just 5 of the many, but they're generally 5 of the most utilized, and I would say probably, without getting too in detail, are the ones that can cover the most ground. Now, if we look, you have an anterior oblique, a posterior oblique, and a lateral position. So all this means is anything in the front, right? Anything that would be using the front chain more. Think delts, pecs, biceps, abs, quads, anything in that realm. And I put some exercises there to kind of show you as a visual. Now, if you look over here, anterior oblique system, so it's the same front chain, only now we're crossing the body, right? So you got to think of the movements that cause you to cross from the top to the bottom. An alternating V-up, a flutter kick, an alternating leg lift, mountain climbers in a plank variations where you're doing knee tucks to your elbows. chops, which are banded variations, standing in a lunge position and chopping a band toward the ground. Any of those anti-rotation movements like pull-off presses, Turkish get-ups, kick-throughs, and beast walks, etc. Posterior chain, anything involving that just straight up and down the back, more of a hinge idea or a pull idea. Back squats, kettlebell swings, deadlifts, pull-ups, hip extension, pie pulls, so on. Posterior oblique could be anything crossing the back line. Now we're looking at wood choppers, right? Moving from one side to the body and up, using the back muscles to help you rotate. Single arm kettlebell clean, kind of an anti-rotation movement, but working the posterior oblique sling. Single arm kettlebell snatch, dumbbell rows are a famous one, obviously. Crab walks, crab with a reach. Any kind of sled pulls, and what we mean by that is where you're grabbing the rope and pulling it towards you, whether it's seated or standing. And then any kind of, we'll say, oblique throws, where you're kind of throwing a med ball up and over the shoulder while you rotate. And the lateral idea means we're just kind of using the lateral lines of the body from the neck down to the ankle there. Half moon, side planks, side plank crunch with a weight. Your side plank crunch normal. What we call this reach throughs, which are basically just a rotation from a plank. There are, again, thousands of different variations that you could use. What I like to do is figure out a combination or a way to utilize all 5 of these fascial trains, and with your freedom to choose the exercises that are under the list that we create for these 5 chains and what we think is effective for these athletes. And the cool thing about this chain is we could quite literally create a workout by just going right down the list, and it would create a fairly effective workout that would also allow them to experience multiple different patterns of movement, which is what we want for youth. So let's take this for example. We could do a front squat, an alternating V up. Let's even have a little fun here and go with a pull up, a single arm kettlebell swing, and a side plank, all in the same workout, encompassing the entire realm of those fascial chains. And now we've given that teen a benefit of understanding different planes of motion in the body, which should, in theory, make them more athletic and hopefully coachable later for more simple movements. I gave an example over here. If you take a look, what I like to do is kind of think about, nervous system being the priority for teens, making them stable, agile, and tensile. That's more of a joke, just for strong. And then competent and functional. Are we getting through to them in the brain with some of these concepts, which we want, which would obviously make them more functional and easier to train in the class. One of the ways we can make sure that happens is if we start all classes with a brain power exercise. So any kind of agility, speed work, hand-eye coordination, fun, something that allows them to kind of wake up a little bit. After that, we kind of want to incorporate all 5 fascial trains in a workout, which we just talked about a second ago, using those movements. We'll add a Metcon, or metabolic conditioning exercises, to the mix that can be used in combination with core exercises. So if we cover all fascial trains, unfortunately, that may not incorporate some of the metabolic conditioning ideas that CrossFit wants you to get in, but we can use that in different facets of the workout. So here's a good example. We're going to start one class off with the brain power idea of agility, ladder, and lateral shuffles for 10 to 15 minutes. Then after that, we're going to go into an AMRAP of 7 minutes for front squats and Turkish get-ups. We'll rest 3 minutes. Then we'll go an AMRAP in 7 minutes of pull-ups, crab with reach. We'll rest 3 minutes and then do side plank crunch times 12 on the left and right side. Run 500 meters for 5 sets. So what I've done there is I put our brain game. If you look at these two, this is actually our anterior sling. This is the anterior oblique sling. Now we're using the posterior sling, the posterior oblique sling, and finishing off with lateral movement as well as metabolic conditioning, thereby creating an entire workout encompassing all of those components and making it fun because we're mixing it up. Now, if we want to get a little bit more specified for more specific results, specify. And what that just means is maybe we can stay on one movement over a 3 to 4 week period, maybe even a weightlifting movement, a gymnastic movement, and a metabolic movement focused, kind of like we do in our main floor classes. And then we go down into, if you take a look of some of my ideas for this. So one of the ways we could focus on this maybe a little bit more, and this is just for a fun idea, is let's say we're working with a group that's, again, working on their agility and nervous system. After that, we do what's a strength and endurance phase. So maybe this is for people who are trying to get used to back squatting. We have them take a back squat, maybe even a barbell, maybe a PVC, 12 to 20 reps. And then at the end of that 12 to 20 reps, after obviously maybe a brief 15-second break, they get the bar back on them and they hold the bottom of an active back squat for 10 to 20 seconds. That will thereby allow them to remember that position at the bottom and wear out stabilizers that should help them squat heavier later. So that's my posterior chain work, but I've kind of added stability into it by forcing a hold. Then if you go down here, now I'm going to work on the different chains or trains going down. So this circuit is 4 to 5 rounds for quality. I'm going to do alternating Supermans, 10 each. That's posterior oblique sling. I'm going to do wall balls, which is my front chain or anterior. I'm going to do mountain climbers, which continues on the anterior chain, but now goes along the oblique slings. So that's anterior oblique. And then I have side lying knee tucks, which again is also on the what we call the lateral line. So this is also a lateral movement. So now I've gotten my posterior, my anterior, and anterior obliques, the posterior with the posterior oblique, and lateral movement. Now we can focus on metabolic conditioning, rowing for 500 meters for 4 sets with a 1 to 2 work to rest ratio. So just to back up a little bit and kind of give you an idea of how my mind works, this is what I sat around doing, and we'll refine this idea throughout, and I'll be looking for input for you guys, or from you guys in the future.